5 monks who became millionaires. You ever wonder where the real secrets of wealth hide? Not in boardrooms or business schools, but in the most unexpected places imaginable. High in the mountains of Tibet, in a monastery so remote it took 3 days of walking just to reach the nearest village, 5 men spent decades living in voluntary poverty. And here's the kicker that'll blow your mind. It was precisely by renouncing money completely that they discovered the exact formula to create millions. See, most people think poverty and wealth are opposites. They're not. They're two sides of the same coin, and these 5 monks understood that coin better than any Wall Street trader ever could. If you're struggling with money right now, if prosperity feels like trying to hold water in your bare hands, what you're about to hear will change everything. Because these monks are going to show you, step by step, exactly how they went from owning nothing to building an empire, and more importantly, how you can too. Don't skip a single moment of this story. Every twist, every revelation, every principle has been carefully placed to guide you from scarcity to abundance. Your financial life is about to transform. The monastery of Tengchen sat perched on a cliff face like an eagle's nest, its whitewashed walls gleaming against the endless blue sky. Inside, 5 monks had just finished their morning meditation. The silence that followed held something different that day, something restless. Brother Kensho, the eldest, sat perfectly still as always. His weathered face betrayed no emotion. At 68, he had spent 45 years in that monastery, and his calm was so profound that younger monks used to joke the mountains themselves learned stillness from him. When Kensho spoke, which wasn't often, people leaned in close because his words carried the weight of deep water. Next to him sat Brother Dawa, and if Kensho was still water, Dawa was a river that refused to stop flowing. At 52, his hands were calloused from decades of fixing everything that broke in the monastery, and everything always broke. The roof, the prayer wheels, the ancient heating system. While other monks contemplated the nature of reality, Dawa was usually elbow-deep in a pipe or rewiring something. "Enlightenment is great," he'd say with a grin, "but try reaching it when the toilet's backed up." Brother Tenzin, 48, spent most of his time staring out windows, but he wasn't daydreaming, he was seeing. Where others saw a crumbling wall, Tenzin saw a garden. Where others saw an empty room, he saw a library. His nickname was Tomorrow's Eyes because he lived perpetually 5 years in the future. The other monks found it exhausting. Tenzin found the present exhausting. Brother Lobsang, 55, was the one with the abacus, always calculating. He knew exactly how many grains of rice were in the monastery's stores, how many days until they needed to reorder candles, how many prayers were said each month. The others teased him for counting everything, but Lobsang would smile mysteriously and say, "The universe is mathematics wearing a disguise." And then there was Brother Mingmer, the youngest at 42, who couldn't walk through the monastery without stopping to chat with everyone. He knew every monk's story, every visitor's background, every farmer's struggles in the valley below. If the monastery was a body, Mingmer was its circulatory system, connecting everyone to everyone else. That morning, something shifted. Kensho opened his eyes first. "Brothers," he said quietly, "I had a dream." Now, when a man who speaks maybe 10 sentences a week says he had a dream, you listen. "I saw a great tree," Kensho continued, his voice like wind through bamboo. "Its roots drew from poverty, but its branches bore the fruit of prosperity, and at its trunk 5 gardeners tended it together." Dawa snorted. "With respect, brother, trees don't work that way. Roots need rich soil, not poverty." "Exactly," Kensho replied, and smiled for the first time in months. That smile changed everything. Over the next weeks, something unprecedented began happening. The 5 monks started having conversations they'd never had before. It started innocently enough. Lobsang was reviewing the monastery's accounts and mentioned they'd been running the same deficit for 23 years. "We receive donations," he said, clicking his abacus beads, "exactly 12% less than our operating costs, every single year. We make up the difference by doing without. We're monks, Tenzin said, staring out the window. Poverty is kind of our brand. Is it though? Mingmer asked, looking up from a letter he'd been writing to a donor's family. Old Chen in the valley, you know what he told me last week. He said he wishes he could send his daughter to school, but he can't afford it. He gives us what little he has out of devotion, and we just accept it and continue being poor. The silence that followed was different than their meditation silences. This one felt heavy, uncomfortable. Dawa stood up abruptly, that thing he did when he needed to fix something. So what are you saying? We should charge Chen more. That's backwards. No, Kensho said softly. We should give him more. Four heads turned toward him. Think about what we've learned here, Kensho continued. We've spent decades studying the nature of desire, the patterns of attachment, the flow of energy. We understand why people suffer with money, the fear, the grasping, the blindness. We see it clearly because we removed ourselves from the game. And that helps Chen how? Dawa challenged. Because, Lobsang said slowly, his fingers frozen on his abacus, we've been looking at this wrong. We thought poverty made us wise. But what if poverty was just the laboratory? What if the wisdom was the actual product? Tenzin's eyes lit up, that look he got when he saw tomorrow. We could teach them. Teach them what? Mingmer asked. How to be poor, they've got that down already. No, Tenzin said, standing now, packing. We teach them what we learned through poverty, the principles, the patterns, the psychology. We could, he stopped, the vision crystallizing. We could create a school, a business. We could help people transform their relationship with prosperity. Using what money? Dawa asked, ever practical. We have $17 in the monastery account. Exactly $17, Lobsang confirmed. Kensho laughed then, a sound so rare the others actually jumped. Perfect. We start with nothing, just like everyone will help. Brothers, I think we've been preparing for this our entire lives without knowing it. The next morning, 5 monks walked down the mountain carrying nothing but the robes on their backs and 45 years of combined wisdom about human nature, suffering, and transformation. The villagers thought they'd lost their minds. You're leaving, old Chen asked, bewildered, but who will pray for us? You will, Mingmer said gently, taking the old man's hands. Chen, you've been giving to us for 20 years. It's time we gave something back, something that might actually help. But you're monks, what do you know about business, about money? Dawa grinned. Absolutely nothing, that's why this might actually work. They settled in a cramped apartment in Kathmandu. 5 men used to mountain silence, now surrounded by car horns, curry smells, and constant noise. That first night, sitting on the floor because they couldn't afford furniture, Lobsang pulled out a notebook. All right, he said. Resources, $17 and 5 brains. Liabilities, 0 business experience, no network, no understanding of markets. Assets, 45 years of studying human psychology, desire, and transformation. What's the play? We need to identify what people actually want, Tenzin said. Not what they say they want, but what they really want. Money, Dawa said flatly. No, Kensho corrected. They want what they think money will give them. Safety, freedom, respect, love. Money is just the bridge. So we help them build better bridges, Mingmer said. But how? Lobsang pressed, specifically. This became their pattern. Tenzin would see the vision, Kensho would understand the deeper truth, Mingmer would identify the human connection, Dawa would ask how to actually build it, and Lobsang would figure out if the math worked. Their first attempt was a disaster. Dawa wanted to start a consulting business immediately. We charge people $50 an hour to talk about their money problems. Simple. They got exactly 0 clients. Maybe because we're wearing robes and living in an apartment with no furniture, Mingmer pointed out after a week of rejection. Or maybe, Tenzin said, because we're trying to sell something people don't understand. We need to show them first. Show them how, Lobsang asked. Kensho smiled. We become the example. We build something valuable from nothing. Then we teach them how we did it. Build what? Dawa demanded. With what capital? Here's where it got interesting. Mingmer had been talking to everyone in their building, because of course he had. The landlord's son was struggling with a small textile import business. The woman downstairs had a failing bookkeeping practice. The family next door wanted to start a restaurant but had no idea how. They all have the same problem, Mingmer reported. They know their trade, but they don't understand the psychology of prosperity. They make just enough to survive, then somehow always end up back at broke. The scarcity loop, Kensho said. Make money, fear losing it, make defensive decisions, lose it anyway. Can we prove that's what's happening? Lobsang asked. They spent 2 weeks just observing, talking, taking notes. Lobsang tracked every financial decision these struggling entrepreneurs made. The patterns were so clear it was almost painful. Look at this, he said one night, spreading his notebooks across the floor. The restaurant family, they had a good month, made decent profit. What did they do? Bought insurance they didn't need because they were afraid of losing the money. The bookkeeper, she undercharges because she's afraid if she asks for her worth, people will leave. The textile guy, he hoards inventory because he's afraid of running out, so his cash is always tied up. Fear, 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 Tenzin murmured. Every decision comes from fear. So we teach them to make decisions from abundance instead, Mingmer asked. No, Kensho said. We show them how we do it. We partner with one of them. We take our $17 and our understanding of human psychology and we build something together. When it works, others will want to know how. Dawa looked skeptical, and if it doesn't work? Then we learn what doesn't work, Kensho replied serenely. Also valuable. They chose the textile business, mainly because the owner, Raj, was desperate enough to try anything and trusting enough to let 5 weird monks into his operation. What do I have to lose? Raj laughed bitterly. I'm going under anyway. Their first day in his shop, the monks just watched. Dawa studied the operational flow. Lobsang tracked the numbers. Mingmer talked to customers. Tenzin stared at the space, seeing what it could become. Kensho observed Raj. That evening, they presented their findings. You're bleeding money in 3 places, Lobsang announced. Inventory waste, operational inefficiency, and underpricing, but those are symptoms. The disease, Kensho said gently, is in here. He tapped his chest. Raj, why did you start this business? To make money, Raj said immediately. No, before that, what did you actually want? Raj was quiet for a long moment. My father was a tailor. He made beautiful things but died poor. I wanted to prove that craftsmanship could be profitable. There it is, Tenzin said excitedly. That's the vision, but somewhere you lost it. You started managing scarcity instead of creating value. Because scarcity is real, Raj shot back. I have bills, rent, suppliers who demand payment. All true, Kensho acknowledged. But you're trying to manage poverty efficiently. We're suggesting you create prosperity strategically. Different game entirely. Over the next 3 months, they rebuilt Raj's business from the inside out, but not the way you'd expect. Dawa's contribution seemed small. He reorganized the entire workflow, eliminating 17 steps that added 0 value. Why fold fabric 3 times when once works? He'd mutter, rearranging everything. Lobsang implemented what he called transparent mathematics. Every number visible, every cost tracked, every price justified. You can't manage what you can't measure, he'd say, teaching Raj to read his business like a book. But here's what shocked everyone. Tenzin had Raj raise his prices, significantly. Are you insane? Raj protested. I'll lose customers. You'll lose the wrong customers, Tenzin corrected. The ones who only value price. You'll attract the ones who value quality. Watch. He was right. Half the customer base vanished. Revenue went up 30%. How? Raj asked, stunned. Because, Kensho explained, you stopped trying to be the cheapest and started being the best. Different value proposition, different customer, different profit margin. But Mingmer's contribution was perhaps the most powerful. He had Raj start teaching free workshops on fabric quality, just teaching, no selling. Give away the knowledge, Raj was aghast. Why would they buy from me then? Because, Mingmer said with a smile, people buy from teachers, not salesmen. You show them you care about their success more than your commission, they'll buy from you forever. 6 months in, Raj's revenue had tripled. His stress had dropped by half. He hired 2 employees. What did you monks do? He kept asking. What's the secret? There is no secret, Kensho said. Just 7 principles we learned from decades of having nothing. Word spread fast. Within a month, 12 other struggling businesses wanted the monks' help. Within 2 months, it was 40. Within 3, they had more demand than they could handle. We need to systematize this, Lobsang said, doing what he did best, turning chaos into structure. We can't personally help everyone. We need to teach the principles in a way others can implement. That's when they hit their first real crisis. A wealthy businessman approached them with an offer that would solve all their financial concerns. He wanted to invest $100,000 in their program, scale it up, franchise it, make it massive. The monks were split right down the middle. We could help thousands, Tenzin argued, his vision expanding. Maybe millions, think of the impact. At what cost? Dawa countered. This guy wants control, wants to turn our principles into a product, wants to commoditize wisdom. Maybe that's not the worst thing, Mingmer said carefully. More people reached means more lives changed. Or more lives exploited, Dawa shot back. Once you put a price tag on wisdom and scale it, it becomes about the money, not the transformation. The math works, Lobsang said quietly. We could do a lot of good with that capital. Everyone turned to Kensho, who hadn't spoken. He sat there for a long time, that old monastery silence filling the room. Finally, what happens when you try to force a flower to bloom faster? It dies, Mingmer said softly. Exactly. Brothers, we're arguing about scale and money, but we've forgotten the first principle we learned. Prosperity flows from creating genuine value, not from chasing numbers. This businessman sees a business opportunity. We see a teaching mission. Those are different intentions with different outcomes. So we turned down $100,000, Dawa asked. We turned down the wrong $100,000, Kensho replied. The right money will come from the right intention. They declined the offer. 2 months later, they were almost broke again. The irony wasn't lost on them. Maybe we made a mistake, Tenzin said one night, staring at their dwindling bank account. Or maybe, Lobsang countered, we're about to discover something important about the 4th principle. The 4th principle, persistence illuminated. It wasn't just about continuing when things got hard. It was about continuing in the right direction even when the wrong direction looked easier. That's when Mingmer had his breakthrough. He'd been talking to their successful clients and noticed something peculiar. Every single one of them wanted to help others who were where they used to be. They wanted to give back. What if we didn't need the businessman's money? Mingmer proposed. What if our successful clients became our partners? They teach what they learned, we train them how to teach it. Everyone helps the next person coming up. A network, Tenzin said, seeing it immediately. Not a business, a movement. That scales organically, Lobsang added, his mind racing through the mathematics of exponential growth. And maintains integrity, Kensho finished, because it's based on service, not profit. Dawa was skeptical. Sounds great in theory. How do we actually build it? The same way we built everything else, Mingmer said, one relationship at a time. They started small. 5 of their successful clients agreed to mentor 5 new clients each. Those 25 people paid what they could afford, Some paid a lot, some paid little. It balanced out. The original 5 clients kept a small percentage for their time. The rest went to the monks to sustain the program. Within a year, they had 200 people in the network. Within 2 years, it was 3,000. Within 5 years, it was impossible to count because the network had become self-sustaining and self-replicating. People called it the Prosperity Sangha, Sangha being the Buddhist term for community. But success brought new challenges. Some of the network members started using the principles to justify greed. "I'm creating value," one businessman said dismissively when called out for underpaying workers. "That's the second principle, right?" "No," Kensho said firmly when this was reported to him. "That's missing the foundation entirely." This led to the most important evolution in their teaching. They realized they'd been so focused on teaching the 7 principles that they'd assumed people understood the underlying intention. They didn't. "We need to go back to the beginning," Kensho said. "Before the principles, there's the shift in consciousness. Without that, the principles become just another tool for the ego to grab more." So they restructured everything around what they started calling the 3 awakenings. The first awakening was realizing that scarcity is a perspective, not a reality. Most people never made it past this one. They intellectually understood it but couldn't feel it. The second awakening was understanding that value is created through service, not extraction. This one took months or years of practice to truly embody. The third awakening was the big one, realizing that your prosperity and others' prosperity are interconnected, not competitive. This was the transformation that changed everything. Once someone has the third awakening, Lobsang observed, the 7 principles become obvious, natural. They're not techniques anymore, they're just how that person sees the world. By their 10th year out of the monastery, the 5 monks had built something none of them could have imagined. The Prosperity Sangha had helped over 50,000 people transform their relationship with money. More importantly, it had created a culture where prosperity wasn't about accumulation but circulation. Money flowed through the network like water, always moving, always finding where it was needed most. Someone would have abundance and naturally share it. Someone else would have a need and naturally receive it. The competitive, zero-sum thinking that dominated most business was replaced by collaborative, positive-sum creativity. But the monks themselves remained relatively simple in their lifestyle. They lived in a modest building now instead of a cramped apartment, but nothing fancy. They still ate simple food, still meditated every morning, still lived far below their means. "Why don't you enjoy your wealth more?" a journalist once asked them. Kensho smiled. "We enjoy it immensely. We just enjoy it differently than you imagine. Our wealth is in our freedom, our purpose, our impact. We have more than we could ever spend on ourselves." That's not poverty or prosperity, that's completion. Their teaching evolved too. They stopped trying to help everyone and focused on those who were truly ready. You can't teach someone to see abundance while they're committed to seeing scarcity, Dawa learned after burning out trying. The 7 principles became more nuanced, more sophisticated. The first principle, abundance mental architecture, wasn't just positive thinking. It was training your attention to see opportunities the way a tracker sees animal signs. It took practice, discipline, daily exercises. The second principle, transformational value creation, was about finding where you could solve problems other people couldn't see. Raj had learned this with his textiles. Others learned it in 1,000 different ways. The third principle, synergistic talent integration. This was the monk's superpower. 5 completely different personalities creating something none could create alone. They taught people how to find their perfect complement, not their clone. The fourth principle, illuminated persistence, continue, but continue wisely. Know when you're persisting toward growth and when you're persisting in stubbornness. Huge difference. The fifth principle, generous flow dynamics, Give strategically, not randomly. Give where it creates circulation, not where it creates dependency. This principle confused people most until they actually practiced it. The sixth principle, strategic simplicity, was Dawa's specialty. Eliminate everything that doesn't serve the core purpose. Most businesses fail from complexity, not from simplicity. The seventh principle, expanded purpose prosperity, was Kensho's wisdom. Make money in service of something bigger than yourself, not as a sacrifice but as an amplification. 20 years after leaving the monastery, the 5 monks were indeed millionaires. But that was almost beside the point. They discovered something far more valuable than money. They discovered that prosperity wasn't something you accumulated, it was something you became. Not through getting more, but through being more. One day, sitting in their teaching center, surrounded by students from around the world, Mingmer asked the question they'd all been thinking. Should we write this down, make it official, create a formal curriculum? We already did, Tenzin said, gesturing to the room full of people. Every person here who transforms becomes the curriculum. Every business that thrives becomes the textbook. Every life that changes becomes the lesson. But what about preservation? Lobsang asked. What happens when we're gone? Kensho laughed, that rare, beautiful sound. Brothers, we've spent 20 years trying to give this away. I think it's safe. Besides, Dawa added with a grin, the best ideas don't need protection. They need freedom. Let them evolve. Let them grow. Let them mutate into whatever they need to become for the next generation. That night, in their final meditation together before bed, the 5 monks sat in the same positions they'd held that morning in the monastery 20 years ago. Same formation, completely different men. Do you ever miss it? Mingmer asked quietly. The simple life. This is the simple life, Kensho replied. The monastery was the complicated one. We were hiding from the world, pretending poverty made us holy. Now we're in the world, using prosperity to make it whole. Much simpler. Speak for yourself, Dawa grumbled. I still think everything's too complicated. They all laughed. The truth was, they'd learned something most people never discover. Poverty and prosperity aren't opposites. They're both states of mind that can exist regardless of your bank account. A poor man can have a prosperity consciousness. A rich man can have a poverty consciousness. The 5 monks had cracked the code not by choosing between poverty and wealth, but by transcending the entire binary. They'd found a third way, the way of enough. Enough to be free, enough to serve, enough to grow, enough to give. Never so little that you're trapped by scarcity, never so much that you're trapped by accumulation. Just enough flowing constantly in and out like breathing. Their final teaching, the one they gave to their most advanced students, was the simplest and the hardest. Stop trying to become prosperous. Start being prosperity itself. Be the abundance you want to see. Be the generosity you want to receive. Be the value you want to earn. You don't attract prosperity, you emanate it. This confused people initially. But you built a business, they'd protest. You made millions, you followed steps. Yes, the monks would reply, but the steps don't work without the consciousness. You can follow every technique perfectly and still fail if you're doing it from scarcity. Or you can make mistakes constantly but succeed if you're operating from abundance. The consciousness matters more than the technique. Some people got it, many didn't. The monks were okay with that. Not everyone's ready, Kensho would say. Plant seeds anyway. Some won't sprout for years. That's fine. We're not selling fast food enlightenment here. By their 25th year, the Prosperity Sangha had touched over 1 million lives directly and countless more indirectly. The ripple effects were impossible to measure. A woman who transformed her mindset taught her children. Those children grew up with abundance consciousness and taught their children. Entire family lines were being rewired. A man who rebuilt his business with the principles hired employees and treated them differently. Those employees started their own businesses with the same values. Entire industries began shifting. The monks never trademarked the principles, never copyrighted the teachings, never tried to control the message. They just kept teaching anyone who was genuinely ready to learn. "Aren't you afraid someone will steal this and make money from it?" a concerned student asked. "Steal what?" Mingmer laughed. "The principles. We stole them from the universe. They're not ours to own. If someone takes them and helps people, beautiful. If someone takes them and perverts them, people will see through it eventually. Truth has a way of surviving." As they aged, each monk focused on what they loved most. Kensho trained teachers in the consciousness work, the hardest, deepest stuff. Dawa built systems and processes so the teachings could scale without losing effectiveness. Tenzin was always 5 years ahead, seeing what the network would need next. Lobsang ensured everything stayed sustainable, financially and energetically. Mingmer connected everyone, weaving relationship after relationship into an ever-expanding web. Different gifts, one purpose. They were often asked the secret of their partnership. How do 5 strong personalities work together for 25 years without killing each other? "Oh, we wanted to kill each other plenty." Dawa would joke, "Still do sometimes." "The secret," Kensho would explain, "is we stopped trying to convince each other and started trying to complement each other." Tenzin's vision without Dawa's pragmatism is fantasy. Dawa's pragmatism without Tenzin's vision is drudgery. Together, magic. "Plus," Mingmer added, "we actually like each other. That helps." "Speak for yourself," Lobsang would mutter, and they'd all laugh. The truth was deeper, though. They'd each transformed so completely from who they'd been in the monastery that they barely recognized their former selves. The poverty hadn't made them wise. Walking through the fire of building something from nothing had made them wise. The monastery had just been preparation. "We thought we were done learning when we left," Tenzin reflected on their 25th anniversary. "Turns out we were just beginning." "The monastery taught us about inner wealth," Kensho said. "The world taught us about outer wealth. Integrating both, that was the real education." Their legacy wasn't the millions of dollars. Most of that had already been given away or reinvested in the network. Their legacy was the thousands of people who'd learned to fish instead of just receiving fish, who'd learned to create value instead of just pursue money, who'd learned to build prosperity that served life instead of dominating it. One student, who'd gone from bankruptcy to building a thriving business that employed hundreds, once asked, "How do I thank you for changing my life?" "Change someone else's," the monks replied in unison. They'd answered that question so many times they could do it in harmony now. That was the real secret of the Prosperity Sangha. It wasn't a program or a business or even a philosophy. It was a transmission. Consciousness passed from person to person, life to life, generation to generation. You couldn't bottle it or package it or sell it. You could only be it, live it, give it away. And the beautiful paradox, the more you gave it away, the more you had. The 5 monks who'd started with $17 and a dream now sat in their teaching center, surrounded by students from 6 continents, representing every religion and background imaginable. Some were wealthy already and wanted to become wealthier in spirit. Some were poor and wanted to become prosperous in fact. All were hungry for the truth that transcended both poverty and wealth. "The question isn't how to make money," Kensho told a new group of students one morning. "The question is, who do you need to become so that prosperity is inevitable? Not guaranteed, nothing's guaranteed, but inevitable in the sense that a fruit tree produces fruit. It's just what it does because that's what it is." "So we need to become prosperity trees?" someone asked, half joking. "Exactly," all 5 monks said together. And they weren't kidding. Because that's what they'd done. 5 men who'd owned nothing had become walking embodiments of abundance, not because they had money, because they'd transformed their relationship with value itself. They created it everywhere they went. They shared it generously. They multiplied it through others. They celebrated it in all its forms. They'd proven something most people think is impossible, that you can start with nothing and build everything. That poverty doesn't define you. That wealth doesn't complete you. That the real prosperity is in becoming someone who creates value wherever they stand. The 7 principles weren't rules. They were descriptions of how prosperity consciousness operates. Follow them mechanically and they do nothing. Embody them and they transform everything. As the sun set on their 25th year, the 5 monks sat together one last time in meditation. Tomorrow they'd fly to different continents to teach. They rarely were all together anymore. The work had grown beyond them, which was exactly the plan. "Any regrets?" Mingmer asked. "None," said Tenzin. "Well, maybe one," Dawa admitted. "I still think we could have organized the whole thing more efficiently." They laughed, same old Dawa. "The kids ask me sometimes," Lobsang said quietly, "if I miss the monastery, the silence, the simplicity." "What do you tell them?" Kensho asked. "I tell them I found something better than silence. I found purpose, something better than simplicity. I found service. The monastery was beautiful, but it was incomplete. We were incomplete. This," he gestured to everything around them, "this completed us." "Hear, hear," Mingmer said softly. They sat in comfortable silence as darkness fell. 5 men who'd walked away from everything to find everything. 5 teachers who discovered that the greatest wealth is the ability to create wealth for others. 5 monks who'd proved that prosperity isn't about having, it's about being. Their story spread around the world, changing everyone it touched. Not because it was unique, there are many paths to prosperity, but because it was true, and truth has a way of recognizing itself. Follow for more stories that can change your life. Leave your comment about how this journey touched you, and you're like to help other people who are also seeking to transform their financial situation.